Jack had been on many missions before, but nothing quite like this. The planet was peaceful, the air was fresh, and the forests seemed to stretch endlessly. He had been sent here to gather information for the United Federation, but it was supposed to be a routine task. Little did he know that this trip would change his life in unexpected ways. As he walked through the dense forest, Jack felt a sense of unease. The trees were tall, their thick leaves blocking out most of the light from the sky. The ground was soft under his boots, and the air was filled with the sound of birds and insects. It was quiet, almost too quiet. Something didn't feel right. Jack paused, looking around. His sharp eyes scanned the surroundings, searching for anything unusual. That's when he saw her. The alien girl stood a few meters away, looking lost and unsure. She was staring at the ground, her large eyes wide. With confusion, she didn't seem to notice Jack at first, but when he moved closer, her gaze snapped up. Her features were delicate, unlike any alien Jack had seen before. Her skin was a soft shade of pale blue, and her long hair shimmered like strands of silver. She was tall and slender, with long arms and legs. But what caught Jack's attention the most was her expression, nervous, as if she was trapped in a world she didn't understand. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He had never seen an alien quite like her. He knew from his training that many alien species had trouble with new environments, but this one, she seemed different. She was alone, and something in her eyes told him she was lost. He cleared his throat, trying to make his presence known without startling her. "Hey, are you okay?" The girl flinched, her eyes darting around nervously. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Jack could tell she was trying to speak, but it seemed like the words just weren't there. She took a step back, and Jack noticed the way her hands trembled. She wasn't just lost. She was afraid. "Hey, it's all right." "I'm not here to hurt you," Jack said softly, raising his hands in a non-threatening gesture. He didn't want to scare her off. The girl's eyes locked onto his hands, and Jack could see her trying to process what he was saying. Her expression was one of deep confusion, and Jack's heart went out to her. He stepped closer, but not too close. "A human. I'm here to help. Can you understand me?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly, though Jack wasn't sure she fully understood. Glanced around, wondering what to do next. He didn't have much time to waste. His mission required him to report back soon, but he couldn't just leave her here. She was alone and lost in an unfamiliar forest. Jack couldn't leave her like that. "Do you know where you're going?" Jack asked gently, trying again. "Do you have a home nearby?" The girl shook her head, her silver hair swaying with the movement. She looked down at her feet, clearly ashamed of not having an answer. Jack could feel her embarrassment. She wasn't used to asking for help, and it made her even more vulnerable. Jack sighed, glancing at the path ahead. The mission could wait a little longer. He wasn't going to leave her out here, bent down to her level, making sure to keep his voice calm and friendly. "Hey, don't worry, we'll figure this out together." The girl lifted her head and looked at him with those large, dark eyes. There was a mix of curiosity and fear in her expression. Jack smiled, hoping to reassure her. "I'm here to help, okay? We can go find someone who can explain all of this." For a moment, she said nothing. Then, very slowly, she nodded. "Good," Jack said with a soft grin. "Let's get you somewhere safe." They began walking. Jack kept a careful eye on the girl, noticing how her movements were hesitant, as if she wasn't sure where to go. She walked slowly beside him, still not saying a word. Her steps were light, like she was afraid to disturb the silence around them. The alien girl's shyness was evident, but Jack didn't mind. He had met people who were shy before. He had learned to be patient with them, giving them time to feel comfortable. He was certain that the girl just needed someone to trust. He could help her find her way. They walked in silence for a while, with Jack leading the way through the thick forest. Every now and then, he glanced back at her, but she remained quiet, her head down, as if she didn't want to be noticed. Jack understood that she was in a strange place, and probably didn't want to attract attention. Finally, after what felt like hours of walking, they reached a small clearing. Jack stopped and turned to the girl. She was still standing a few feet away, looking around nervously. All right, let's take a break here. You must be tired, Jack said, gesturing to the patch of soft grass beneath them. The girl hesitated, but then sat down, her movements slow and uncertain. Jack took a seat across from her, giving her space. He knew better than to push her too much. She wasn't ready to speak yet, and that was okay. He had to earn her trust first. As Jack sat there, he thought about his mission. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He wasn't supposed to be helping a lost alien girl in the middle of an unknown planet. Something that made him want to protect her. Couldn't leave her alone in this strange place. He had no idea who she was or where she came from, but he was determined to help her find her way. Minutes passed, and the girl remained silent, lost in her own thoughts. Jack didn't push her. He simply sat with her, giving her time to calm down. Eventually, she looked up at him, and this time her gaze seemed a little less fearful. She still didn't speak, but Jack could see the faintest glimmer of trust in her eyes. "Don't worry. We'll figure it out," Jack said quietly. "Oh." The girl nodded again, this time with a bit more confidence. It was a small step, but it was enough. Jack smiled to himself. This would take time, but he was ready for it. Together, they would find a way through this. This part introduces the characters, their initial encounter, and sets up the main dynamic of the story, the human helping the alien girl overcome her shyness and fear. The tone is gentle, kind, and focuses on creating a foundation for the rest of the story. Ask ChatGPT. Jack sat on the soft grass, watching the girl. She was still sitting a few feet away, her eyes darting around, unsure of what to do next. Jack had hoped that after their short break, she would feel more at ease, but the silence lingered between them. She was still too shy to speak, and Jack could tell that whatever had caused her to be so lost had left her anxious and hesitant. "Well, we can't stay here forever," Jack muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He was starting to realize that this wasn't going to be an easy task. It wasn't just about finding her way home. There was something deeper, something that made her seem so distant, like a person lost in her own world. He glanced over at the girl. She had pulled her knees to her chest and was staring at her feet, avoiding eye contact. Jack sighed, trying to think of a way to break the silence. He had a few language tools in his pack that could help communicate with different species. But this wasn't a typical language barrier. She wasn't just struggling to speak a different language. It was as though she was trapped in her own. Fear. "Okay," Jack said with a gentle smile, getting up to walk closer to her. He didn't want to scare her, so he moved slowly, stopped a few feet away and sat down, giving her space. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small device, a translator that he had used on previous missions. He could pick up certain frequencies in alien languages and translate them, but Jack wasn't sure if it would work with this girl's voice. "Hey, I have something that might help," Jack said, holding the device out toward her. The girl didn't respond at first. Her large dark eyes stayed focused on the ground, and she didn't even glance at the translator. A little higher, hoping to get her attention, he tried again, his voice soft and patient. "It's a translator. Maybe it can help us understand each other better. Would you like to try?" At the sound of his voice, the girl finally looked up. She studied the device for a moment, her eyes flicking between Jack and the translator. Jack held his breath, wondering if she would take the leap and trust him enough to try. After a few long moments, the girl slowly reached out and touched the translator. Jack watched her closely, noting the way her fingers hesitated before making contact. She seemed so delicate, as if unsure of her surroundings, unsure of everything. Her fingers brushed the device lightly, and Jack felt a small sense of relief. She wasn't rejecting it completely. With a soft click, the translator came to life. Jack turned it on, and a soft voice filled the air. It wasn't in the girl's language, but it seemed to adapt to her voice. The translator began to process the sounds, trying to catch the patterns of her speech. The girl's eyes widened as she heard the voice coming from the device. It wasn't the same as speaking her own language, but it was the first time in a long while that she had heard something that felt familiar. Jack's heart softened when he saw her reaction. She looked less frightened, more curious now. "Don't know if this will work," Jack said, still holding the translator out. but it's worth a shot." The girl nodded slowly, her expression still unsure, but there was a small shift. She seemed to be considering it. Then, without another word, she finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Jack leaned forward, listening carefully as the translator worked to turn her words into something he could understand. "I don't know... how. I got here," the translator echoed in clear English. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure if that was exactly what she had meant, but it was enough to give him something to work with. He smiled, hoping to encourage her. "It's okay. We'll figure it out together." The girl's eyes met his, and for a moment, there was a quiet understanding between them. She was still so shy, but Jack could see that she was willing to trust him, just a little. He could feel the connection growing, even if it was slow and small. "Can you tell me where you came from?" Jack asked gently, trying to keep his voice soft so as not to overwhelm her. Her eyes flicked downward again, and she hesitated. Her fingers fidgeted with the fabric of her clothes. Jack could see the hesitation in her every movement. It was as though she was trapped in a world where she couldn't speak freely, couldn't express what she truly wanted to say. "I don't know," the translator repeated. Jack felt a pang of sympathy. He knew she wasn't used to speaking, at least not openly. It was clear that something had caused her to shut down, to retreat into herself. Whatever it was keeping her from opening up fully. "That's okay," Jack said softly, trying to reassure her. "We don't have to know everything right now. We'll take it one step at a time." The girl seemed to relax a little at his words, and Jack could tell that she was starting to feel more comfortable with him. She wasn't speaking much, but the fact that she had answered at all was progress. They sat together in the clearing for a while longer. Jack continued to try using the translator, asking simple questions, but the girl only answered in small, hesitant words. It was as if she was trying to find the right way to say something but couldn't quite get the words out. Jack understood that it wasn't just a language barrier. There was something deeper at play. This girl was afraid of speaking, afraid of being judged, and afraid of the world around her. He could see it in the way she avoided his gaze, in the way her body language spoke louder than any words she could say. But Jack wasn't giving up. He wasn't going to leave her in this state. He was patient, taking the time to allow her to speak at her own pace. He knew that once she felt safe enough, she would open up. The minutes passed, and Jack kept asking small questions, watching the girl carefully. Slowly but surely, she started to speak more, her voice growing slightly more confident. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show that she was beginning to trust him. By the time the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the clearing, Jack felt a sense of hope. They had made progress. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And for Jack, that was all he needed. The journey was just beginning, but with the translator and the bond they were slowly building. Jack was sure they would find their way through whatever challenges lay ahead. In this part, the focus is on the communication barrier and Jack's efforts to help the girl feel comfortable. There's a sense of patience and growth as the two characters begin to understand each other, even if it's in small steps. The tension remains, but there's a gentle shift towards trust and the promise of future progress. Ask ChatGPT. The sun had begun to set, casting a warm orange glow over the clearing where Jack and the girl sat. The air was cool now, and the peaceful sounds of the forest had taken over, as if the world around them was quietly watching. Jack leaned against a large tree, glancing over at the girl. She was sitting a few feet away, her silver hair shimmering in the fading light. She hadn't said much since their last conversation. But Jack could sense she was still struggling, holding something back. The translator was quiet for now. It seemed to have done its job earlier, helping them communicate in small ways. But there was still something in the air between them. Jack could feel it like a barrier that had yet to be broken. He wanted to ask more questions, to understand her better, but he knew better than to push too hard. For now, he would let her take the lead when she was ready. After a few minutes of silence, Jack decided to speak again. "You know, you don't have to say everything right away. Take your time," he said softly. His voice was calm and understanding, as though he was speaking to someone who needed reassurance. "We're not in a hurry." The girl glanced up at him, her dark eyes filled with a mix of confusion and uncertainty. She looked down again, her fingers nervously pulling at the edges of her clothes. Jack knew that this wasn't just about getting her back home. She wasn't just lost in the forest. There was something deeper that kept her from speaking freely, something inside her that made her withdraw from the world around her. Jack took a deep breath. He wasn't a therapist, and he wasn't trained to handle every kind of situation. But he knew one thing: he had to earn her trust. And that meant letting her open up at her own pace. "I know it's not easy," Jack continued. "I can tell you're going through something difficult. If you want to talk about it, I'm here." He paused, his eyes scanning the girl's face. "I'm not going to pressure you, but I want you to know you're not alone." For a long moment, the girl didn't respond. She seemed lost in her own thoughts, staring at the ground. Jack wondered if she was even listening or if she had heard him at all. But then, to his surprise, she spoke. I can't," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The translator didn't pick up much, but Jack could hear the sadness in her tone. Jack leaned forward, his heart going out to her. He wasn't sure what she meant by those words, but he knew it was important. Whatever was going on inside her, whatever had brought her to this point, was something she had carried for a long time, something she was afraid to share. "It's okay," Jack replied gently. "You don't have to tell me everything, but I can tell that you're carrying something heavy. If you want to share, I'll listen." The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide with hesitation. She seemed like she was weighing whether or not to say more. Jack waited patiently, not rushing her, letting her decide when the time was right. Slowly she began to speak again, this time in broken sentences, her words coming out in fragments. I was, ... not allowed, ... to speak, ... to anyone." Her voice cracked as she spoke, as though just saying the words was painful. The translator caught the meaning, though it wasn't perfect. It seemed to be enough for Jack to understand that something in her past had made it difficult for her to express herself. Jack's heart softened. He hadn't expected her to open up this much, but now he understood. She had been silenced in some way. Whether by her people, her society, or something else entirely, it had made her believe that her voice didn't matter. And now she was afraid to speak because she wasn't sure if anyone would listen. Jack took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "It's okay," he said again, his voice firm but gentle. "You're safe here. You can say whatever you want. You don't have to be afraid anymore." The girl lowered her head, her silver hair falling around her face like a curtain. Could see the weight of her emotions in her shoulders, as if she were carrying the burden of years of silence. He wanted to say more, but he didn't know what would help. All he could do was wait and show her that he was there for her. After a long pause, the girl finally looked up, meeting Jack's gaze. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "I don't know how," she whispered. Jack nodded, his expression softening. "That's okay, you don't have to know how. You just have to try." He paused, giving her a reassuring smile. "I'm here to help you. You don't have to do it alone." For the first time since they had met, the girl seemed to relax just a little. It was a small change, but Jack noticed it. Her shoulders lowered slightly, and the tightness in her posture seemed to ease. She wasn't ready to speak freely yet, but she had made the first step. That was enough for Jack. The two of them sat in silence for a while, the only sound being the wind rustling through the trees. Jack didn't push her to speak more. Understood that healing didn't happen overnight. It was a slow process, one that took time and patience. But he had made a promise to himself. He wasn't going to leave her until she was ready. As the evening settled into night, Jack pulled a blanket from his bag and spread it out on the ground. He offered it to the girl, who accepted it with a quiet nod. They both sat on the blanket, wrapped in the warmth of the night, and for a brief moment there was peace between them. No more words were needed. Jack looked at the stars, his mind racing with thoughts of the journey ahead. He didn't know how long it would take for the girl to open up completely, but he knew this. Whatever her past had been, it was not going to define her. With time, patience and a little help, she would find her voice again. The girl, too, gazed up at the stars, her eyes reflecting the endless sky above. She was still fragile, still unsure, but there was a spark of something new. In her, something that had been hidden for too long. Jack could feel it. She wasn't just lost in the forest anymore. She was on the path to finding herself, and he would be there to help her every step of the way. And as they sat together, the night air cool and calm around them, both Jack and the girl knew that this was only the beginning of their journey. The road ahead might be long, but they were no longer alone. The next day, Jack woke up early, the soft light of dawn peeking through the trees and casting a warm glow on the clearing. He stretched and looked over at the girl, who was still sleeping, curled up in the blanket he had given her the night before. She looked peaceful, but Jack knew that her journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. He had made a promise to himself that he wouldn't leave her alone. She was far from home, lost in a strange world, and she needed someone she could rely on. Jack wasn't sure how to help her find her way, but he knew he had to try. He wasn't going to let her face this alone. As the girl slowly stirred, Jack stood up and began packing up their small camp. He didn't want to wake her too early, but they had to keep moving. The forest was vast, and he wasn't sure where they were, but the longer they stayed in one place, the more dangerous it could become. After everything they had been through, they couldn't afford to waste any time. When the girl finally woke up, she sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. She looked around, still confused, as if unsure of where she was. Jack smiled gently and approached her. "Good morning," he said, keeping his voice soft. "How did you sleep?" The girl nodded, her silver hair falling around her face like a curtain. She didn't speak right away, still unsure, but Jack didn't mind. It was okay. They were still figuring each other out, learning how to communicate. It wasn't going to happen all at once. "We should get moving soon," Jack said. "We need to keep going if we're going to find a way out of this forest." The girl's eyes flicked to the path ahead, and Jack could see the hesitation in her gaze. She wasn't used to making decisions on her own, and it was clear that every step forward was a challenge for her. Jack understood that. But he also knew that she needed to start making those decisions, that she needed to take control of her journey. Jack gave her an encouraging smile. "Don't worry, we'll figure this out together. You can do it." The girl didn't respond at first. She just stared at the ground, her fingers pulling at the edges of the blanket. Jack waited, not rushing. He wasn't going to force her into anything, but he hoped his words would give her the confidence she needed. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice still quiet, but stronger than before. "I can try," she said, looking up at Jack with uncertainty in her eyes. Jack's heart lifted. It was a small step, but it was a step forward. "That's all I'm asking for," he said, offering her his hand to help her up. "Let's go." They packed up the rest of their things in silence. Jack took the lead, walking down a narrow path through the forest. The girl walked a few steps behind him, her movements still unsure but steady. Jack kept glancing back at her, making sure she was okay. She wasn't speaking much, but her presence beside him was a comfort. As they walked, Jack tried to make small talk, hoping it would help her feel more comfortable. "I don't know where we're going, but we'll figure it out," he said, keeping his tone light. "I've been on missions like this before, but this is different. I've never had to look out for someone like this." The girl's gaze flicked to the ground, and for a moment Jack thought she wasn't listening. But then she spoke, her voice soft and hesitant. "You, ... want to help me?" Jack stopped walking for a moment, surprised by the question. He turned to face her, giving her a reassuring smile. "Of course I do. I promised I would. I'm not going to leave you here. You don't have to go through this alone." The girl was silent for a moment, processing his words. She seemed unsure, as if she wasn't used to people offering help. Without expecting something in return, it made Jack realize just how much pain she had endured, how much she had been through before meeting him. He couldn't imagine what it had been like for her, but he knew that, for whatever reason, she had learned to distrust others. "I'm not used to trusting anyone," the girl said quietly, almost to herself. Jack nodded, understanding. I get it. Trust is hard. But I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help. You can trust me." She looked up at him then, her eyes searching his face for any sign of dishonesty. Jack met her gaze, hoping she could see the sincerity in his eyes. Slowly she nodded, the smallest hint of a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll trust you." Jack felt a rush of relief. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The trust she had placed in him was a precious thing, and he wasn't going to take it lightly. He couldn't let her down. They continued their journey through the forest, walking side by side. The girl was still quiet, but Jack noticed the way her steps had become more confident. She wasn't just following him anymore. She was walking alongside him, taking her place in this new world. After a few hours of walking, they came across a small stream. Jack stopped and knelt down, cupping his hands in the cool water to drink. He looked up at the girl who was standing a few steps away, watching him. "This could be a good place to rest for a bit," Jack said, gesturing to the stream. "We can refill our water and take a break." The girl nodded, her eyes still, distant but less fearful than before. Jack took a deep breath, trying to think of the next steps. They were making progress, but there was still a long way to go. He didn't know where they were headed, but he was starting to believe they would find a way through this together. The girl walked closer, kneeling beside the stream to drink. Jack watched her, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. She was becoming stronger, more confident with each step, but there was still so much she needed to heal from. Hoped that, in time, she would find her voice and the courage to face whatever challenges came next. As they sat by the stream, the peaceful sounds of the forest surrounded them. Jack looked at the girl, who seemed more at ease now, her gaze fixed on the flowing water. She wasn't the same frightened, lost girl he had met yesterday. She was growing, and Jack could see it in her eyes. They didn't speak much during their break, but there was something comforting in the silence between them. It wasn't awkward or uncomfortable, it was simply a shared moment of peace. When they finally stood to continue their journey, the girl's steps were more certain. Jack smiled to himself. The road ahead might be difficult, but with each step they took, they were moving closer to something new, something neither of them could predict, but both of them were ready to face. As they left the stream behind and walked deeper into the forest, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they would find their way. Ask ChatGPT. The days had begun to blend together as Jack and the girl, whose name he had finally learned was Mira, continued their journey through the dense forest. Each day was a new challenge, but with each challenge, there were signs of progress. Mira was becoming stronger, more confident. Jack could see it in the way she carried herself, the way she spoke, and the way she faced every new obstacle with more courage than the last. They had traveled for miles, and although they hadn't found any sign of civilization yet, Jack remained hopeful. Mira wasn't the same girl he had met just a few days ago, shy, withdrawn, unsure of herself. She was slowly finding her voice, gaining the strength to speak up, and making decisions on her own. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments where fear held her back, but Jack could see the change in her, and that gave him hope. One afternoon, as they moved deeper into the forest, they came across a large rock formation. It wasn't much, but it provided a nice spot to rest and take. In the surroundings, the sun was beginning to dip low in the sky, casting long shadows across the land. Jack sat down on a flat rock and stretched his legs. Mira, who had been walking beside him for most of the day, stopped a few feet away and looked around, eyes scanning the horizon. "You okay?" Jack asked, glancing up at her. Mira didn't answer immediately. She stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, her body still. Jack could tell she was deep in thought. It had become a familiar sight. Over the past few days, Mira would go quiet when she was processing something. When she was trying to understand her own emotions, Jack respected her space, but knew that in time, she would open up when she was ready. "I don't know what to do next," Mira said quietly, finally turning toward Jack. Her voice was still soft, but there was a hint of frustration in it. "Never been ... free like this before." Jack frowned, his concern growing. What do you mean? I've always had people telling me what to do, she continued, her eyes downcast. I never had to make decisions on my own. I was controlled, but now here I don't know what's right or what's wrong. I don't know if I'm making the right choices. Jack was quiet for a moment, letting her words sink in. He could understand her frustration. She had spent her life in a place where freedom was restricted, where choices were made for her. Now that she was free, she didn't know how to handle it. Jack had seen it before in people those who had spent so long following rules. They didn't know how to find their own path once they were given the freedom to do so. You're not alone in this, Mira, Jack said finally, his voice steady. You don't have to figure everything out right away. You're learning, and that's okay. You're not making mistakes. You're growing. Mira looked up at him, her eyes still. Unsure, I'm scared, she whispered. What if I choose the wrong path? Jack stood up and walked over to her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Everyone is scared sometimes, Mira. The important thing is that you keep moving forward. You're not alone in this anymore. You have me, and you have yourself. That's enough for now, Myra nodded, her lips pressing into a small smile. It wasn't much, but it was progress. For the first time, she wasn't holding herself back. She was beginning to trust not only Jack, but herself as well. They sat down on the rocks together, watching the sun continue its descent. The air was cool, and the forest around them was peaceful, the only sounds being the rustling of leaves. In the breeze and the distant calls of animals, quiet wasn't uncomfortable. It was a shared space where both of them could simply exist without needing to speak. After a while, Jack stood up again, stretching his arms above his head. We should keep going. We're not too far from the edge of the forest now. I can feel it. Mira stood as well, brushing the dust off her clothes. She looked at Jack, a determined glint in her eyes. Let's go then, she said, her voice a little stronger now, a little more sure of itself. They set off again, this time with a sense of purpose in their steps. As they walked, Jack could see that Mira was no longer just following him. She was walking alongside him as an equal. The trust between them had grown, and so had her confidence. As the days passed, the two of them continued their journey. They faced new challenges, each one more difficult than the last, but Mira tackled them head-on. Whether it was crossing a treacherous river, finding shelter during a storm, or navigating through unfamiliar terrain, Mira proved that she was capable. Jack had known she had it in her, but seeing her strength and determination up close still amazed him. It wasn't just the physical challenges that Mira faced. She had to battle her own doubts, her own fears. She still had moments of hesitation, but each time she chose to push through them. Every decision she made, no matter how small, was a step toward her own independence. And Jack was there every step of the way, guiding her when she needed it and stepping back when she needed space. One evening, as they sat around a small campfire, Jack noticed something different in Mira. She was looking at the fire, her expression calm, her eyes distant. There was a peacefulness about her that hadn't been there before. She was no longer just reacting to the world around her. She was starting to shape her own path. Mira turned to him, a soft smile on her face. Thank you, she said, her voice steady, for everything. Jack looked at her, surprised. What do you mean? You didn't give up on me, she said quietly. Even when I was afraid, even when I didn't know what to do, you never gave up on me. Jack smiled back, the warmth of the fire reflected in his eyes. I didn't have to. I always knew you had it in you. Mira's smile grew a little brighter. She wasn't the same girl Jack had met in the forest. She had come so far, and Jack was proud of her. Proud of the way she had grown, of the way she had fought for her own voice, and for the way she had come to trust herself. Let's keep going, Mira said, standing up and brushing off her clothes. There's more out there for us to discover. Jack nodded. That's the spirit. Together they moved forward, ready to face whatever challenges came next. Neither of them knew exactly what the future held, but they knew they would face it together. And with each passing day, they both grew stronger. The journey wasn't over. But for the first time, they both felt ready for whatever came next. In this part, Mira continues to grow and overcome her fears, learning to trust both Jack and herself. Jack's patience and support have helped her gain the strength to face new challenges and make decisions on her own. Their bond deepens, and Mira becomes more confident, no longer just following Jack, but walking beside him as an equal. The focus is on growth, trust, and the journey toward independence. The morning sun broke through the trees, casting golden light over the path ahead. Jack and Mira had been traveling for what seemed like weeks through dense forests and across open fields. And now they were nearing the edge of the wilderness. The sounds of the forest were slowly giving way to the more distant, unfamiliar noises of civilization. Jack could feel the change in the air. Things were different now, and the journey was about to shift again. They had come so far, Jack couldn't help but look over at Mira, who walked beside him. She was no longer the shy, lost girl he had met at the edge of the forest. She had become someone else, someone stronger, someone more sure of herself. It wasn't just the physical journey they had been on, it was the emotional one as well. Mira had learned to trust herself, to trust Jack, and now she was ready to face whatever the world had in store for her. The past few days had been quieter. As they had traveled, the terrain had become easier to navigate, and Mira was now taking the lead in some situations, guiding them with her newfound confidence. She no longer hesitated to make decisions, and Jack was proud of how far she had come. It was amazing to see someone transform like that, to watch them overcome their fears and find their own voice. "Do you think we'll find a town soon?" Mira asked as they walked along the path. Her voice had become more steady, more confident. Jack noticed that she was looking around with interest, her eyes no longer filled with uncertainty. "I think we're close," Jack replied. "I've seen some signs of people living nearby. The trees are thinning out, so I'm guessing we're near the outskirts of some kind of settlement." Erin nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I'm ready for a change," she said. I think I'm ready. To be around people again?" Jack looked at her with a mixture of pride and concern. He knew that the journey ahead would still be challenging for her. Even though she had grown stronger, the real-world people, places, new experiences would test her in ways she hadn't faced before. But he believed in her. He had seen her take on every obstacle with determination, and he knew she was capable of facing whatever came next. As they walked, the forest began to open up, and Jack's hope grew stronger. He could see small patches of land, signs of life. Maybe there would be a village or a small town just over the hill, he had to admit. A part of him was eager to see where they would end up. After everything they had been through, it felt like they were on the edge of something new. After a few hours of walking, they reached a clearing at the top of a hill. The view was breathtaking. Below them, nestled between two small rivers, was a small village. The buildings were simple, made of wood and stone, but there was life. There's smoke rising from chimneys, people moving around, animals grazing in the fields. It was exactly what Jack had hoped for. "We made it," Jack said, a smile breaking across his face. He looked over at Mira. "It's not much, but it's a place to rest, a place to start fresh." Mira stood beside him, her eyes wide as she took in the sight of the village. For a moment, she was silent. She had always been so unsure of what to expect, so afraid of what people might think of her. Now, standing at the edge of this new world, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. "It's beautiful," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I never imagined I'd see something like this." Jack smiled, feeling a sense of warmth in his chest. "It's a start, a new beginning." They made their way down the hill toward the village. As they approached, Jack noticed that the people who were walking through the streets seemed busy, but not unfriendly. There were children playing near the fields, adults working in the market, and a few people waving at them as they passed. It wasn't much, but it was a place where they could find help, rest, and maybe even answers to what came next. Mira seemed to take it all in with wide eyes, absorbing every detail. Jack noticed how she walked with a little more confidence now, her steps steady and sure. She was still quiet, but Jack could see that she was taking in the world around her, feeling it, experiencing it. She wasn't the same girl who had been lost in the forest, unsure of her place in the world. She had found her place, at least for now. They stopped at a small inn near the center of the village. The building was simple, with a welcoming sign. Above the door, Jack opened the door, and they were greeted by a warm, bustling atmosphere. A few people sat at the tables, talking and laughing, while the innkeeper behind the counter smiled as they entered. "Can I help you too?" the innkeeper asked in a friendly tone. Jack stepped forward. "We've been traveling for a while," he said. "We could use a place to rest for a while." The innkeeper nodded. "Of course, we've got rooms available. You look like you've been through quite the journey." Mira shifted nervously, but Jack placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We've had a long road, but we're here now." The innkeeper led them to a small, comfortable room, and after they had settled in, Jack sat down on the edge of the bed. Mira was standing by the window, her back to him, staring out at the village below. The change in her was undeniable. Girl who had once been too shy to speak now stood tall, facing the world with a quiet strength. She had come so far, and Jack couldn't help but feel proud of her. "We made it," Jack said, his voice soft but filled with warmth. Mira turned to him, her eyes shining with something new. "Yes, we did," she replied, a smile spreading across her face. "Not sure what's next, but I think I'm ready for whatever comes." Jack smiled back at her. "You're ready? And I'll be here no matter what." As they sat in silence, the world outside continued on, and for the first time in a long time, both Jack and Mira felt a sense of peace. The road ahead might still be uncertain, but for now, they were exactly where they needed to be. A new beginning was waiting for them, and they were ready to face it together. In this part, Mira and Jack reached the village, marking a major turning point in their journey. Mira's growth is highlighted as she steps into a new world, ready to embrace what comes next. The story ends on a hopeful note, with both characters looking forward to their future together, strengthened by the challenges they faced. Ask ChatGPT.